You're listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us live every Thursday. Also, I forgot to mention that we take the 5 most popular stories from our websites, Industrial Equipment News and Manufacturing.net, not just from the internet. So, there's a little bit more put into it than that. Jeff, welcome back this week. How you doing?
Good to be back.
Yeah?
Even better that my daughter's feeling healthy and all that good stuff. A couple rough days, but otherwise we're good.
Were you nostalgic over the opportunity to be able to get the deep swab into your nose again just to see?
The deep swab.
I did not miss that, but yeah, did that twice. Mm-hmm. Good results.
Just oh, that's right. This is miserable.
I didn't have to do it as much as you did. With your kids going to daycare and stuff, we were pretty fortunate there. But.
Oh, yeah. I was just telling my child's teacher about how the word test is permanently ruined for him now. Just no, not a test, not a test. Oh, don't worry. This one's not going to penetrate your brain. Anna, how you doing this week?
I'm doing good. It's going to be 70 degrees, I think, by the end of this podcast recording. So yeah, it's going to get sweaty in here. Let's kick off.
Let's get sweaty.
Let's get sweaty.
Let's get sweaty.
Sweatiest podcast.
Welcome to the Today in Manufacturing podcast. Let's get sweaty.
Milk was a bad choice.
Well, before we perspire, we have a word from our sponsor. Hi, I'm David Manti with Industrial Equipment News. Selecting the right hoses to keep your workers safe and facilities operational is crucial, but not all hoses are created equal. So, to help us work it out, Doug Nordstrom, hose product manager at Swagelok, is going to help us figure it out. Tuesday, May 23rd at 1 p.m. Central, please join us live. So, Doug, I heard that you can get lightning bolts in hoses. Is that true? And is that something we're going to discuss?
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of people aren't aware of something called static dissipation, especially through softer material hoses like Teflon. It's a very common failure, and it actually is a lightning bolt that shoots through the hose, causing leakage.
No one wants that.
No one wants that.
And we're going to figure it out May 23rd. It's a Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central. Register now to join us live. And we're back. And before it gets too moist in the studio, just a reminder that this week's episode is brought to you by Swagelok. Hose failures are unfortunately a very common source of equipment downtime and can create significant safety risks. Join us Tuesday, May 23rd at 1 p.m. for Mastering Hose Selection in Your Facility, a new live video podcast with yours truly. Master your hose and register now. Our first story this week, Lordstown warns it may fail as Foxconn gets jumpy. Earlier this week, Lordstown Motors yelled Mayday after Foxconn threatened to back out of a $170 million investment. That's because it happened on May 1st, guys. It's because it happened on May 1st.
Good work.
On April 21st, Foxconn told Lordstown that it was in breach of their investment agreement because it received a delisting warning from NASDAQ days earlier. Lordstown is in danger of being delisted because its share price closed below $1 on March 7th and hasn't bounced back. Shares traded for $29 in 2020. In a statement, Lordstown said, quote, "As a result of these uncertainties, there is substantial doubt regarding our ability to continue." Anna, is this some sort of high-pressure tactic by Lordstown to both push away its only investor and make sure that its share price never reaches above $1?
I don't think so. I think there's a lot more to this, and I don't think Foxconn is really just like an innocent victim in this whole process either.
Get out of town.
I know that's going to come as a huge shock to everyone listening, but we can go into some of that detail here. So since we posted this story, it looks like failure of this deal is looking more and more likely by the day. Lordstown made a few more revelations in a regulatory filing today that they posted. And they basically said that they are at an impasse with Foxconn regarding any future investments and that Foxconn does not intend to close on a critical financing package next week. Foxconn, I think, is really trying to pin this whole thing on Lordstown, blaming them for the fact that their stock dropped below $1 a share, that they're being, at risk of being dropped from the NASDAQ. But Lordstown, in its regulatory filing today, basically said like, hey, you can't exercise termination rights here because you already breached our investment agreement already by failing to, quote, use necessary efforts to agree upon a budget that provides the funding that they need to operate. So Lordstown basically says you can't use this as an excuse to get out of the deal because you compromised the deal already.
Yeah.
Foxconn has until May 8th to buy a certain number of shares of their common stock. And if they don't, then they're further in breach of a deal that both parties allege the other is already in breach of. So obviously this is like clearly like a huge mess, right? Already. This is what happens with Foxconn.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they've created this joint venture, which it's my understanding has enabled some sharing of intellectual property. So if Foxconn can emerge from this having dumped maybe like a half-ass investment in, but gained some property and intellectual property, then I don't know, maybe that was the plan all along. It's hard to know, but, getting a glare from the producer.
How dare you?
Half butt investment is what I meant. Anyway, so I don't think that Lordstown had any other suitors when Foxconn extended this lifeline originally. Like, it was pretty clear that it was this or bankruptcy. But instead, it looks like they get this and bankruptcy. Remember, they've given Lordstown 30 days to bring up their stock price, but no financing help to enable them to do that. So I don't see how this works in the end.
Jeff, Foxconn and its nefarious ways come again. It was episode 66. So nearly, it's been 60 weeks. We're on 117. It's episode 66 when the whole Lordstown Foxconn dance started happening. And I dare say we predicted all of this to a T.
Yeah, I seem to remember you transitioning and saying, Jeff, do you think this is going to help revive Lordstown? And my answer was no.
No. Yeah.
It seems to come to fruition. It's kind of a vicious cycle here. And I don't in any way, shape, or form want to sound like a Foxconn apologist or supporter or anything like that, because they knew what they were getting into, and now they're trying to back out of it in a really public way at a point in time. Whereas if they were in with Lordstown, this is the time to really show your support if that's what you want it to be.
Right.
But obviously that's not what they want to do. The other thing though is it's this vicious circle, right? They need the funding to make trucks. Foxconn says, you're not making any vehicles here. What work are you giving us? This partnership isn't working. Mm-hmm. So it's broken on all areas. I kind of want to go back about 2.5 years ago to the fall of 2020. So less than 3 years ago, this company was valued at $1.6 billion. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That shot its stock price up, and I think you're going to get into this a little bit, to over $29. Okay? Huge value here. Want to bring up another name, Steve Burns, the initial CEO and founder of Lordstown Motors, right? Mm-hmm. He was the one who was going to launch this truck. They had all these big orders supposedly in the pipeline. Everything was looking great. Part of his package was something in the neighborhood. It was north of 30 million shares of Lordstown stock. Since he was let go after the whole Hindenburg report, everything came through, all those orders were falsified. They weren't meeting any of the production deadlines, all that kind of stuff. This guy has sold stock worth over almost $60 million.
Yeah.
This guy did not make a truck, did not hit a deadline, did not produce anything. But because of this ridiculous evaluation or valuation of this company, he cleared $60 million. This is just one of many red flags that has come up in this whole Lordstown operation. And I think the thing is, at every turn, you were rooting for this. You were rooting for it when it came out. You were rooting for it even though we weren't optimistic, when Foxconn started putting some money into this. You thought hopefully it could work. But once you get underneath the fact, and you had what was clearly a CEO who was looking for a payday, not to produce a truck. When you start looking at what they actually did produce, when Car and Driver did a review on it, they said basically this is a fleet vehicle because it doesn't have the bells and whistles to compete with the Lightning. It doesn't have anything to compete with Rivian. It was even behind the Hummer in their reviews.
Okay.
So they were saying it just doesn't have that. It doesn't have the same qualities you need. The charging range was less than 200 miles. Okay. Yeah. It's not competitive for a consumer vehicle, but it's priced too high to be a fleet vehicle. So while you can look at all of the issues that Foxconn has sort of brought to light here or not supported Lordstown, the underlying issue is they couldn't make a truck.
Yeah.
They couldn't make it on time. And once they did, there's not a good market for it.
Yeah.
It's just doomed to fail. And unfortunately, I think it's time.
The Lordstown truck was the one that they pushed downhill, right?
Actually, I believe that was Nikola.
Okay.
I think they got in trouble more at the SEC with all their false filings.
Okay. So Anna, you kind of alluded to Foxconn trying to pilfer the IP. Is there any IP of value there if we don't have a car that's working?
Well, I don't know. I mean, potentially, yes. I mean, I think the devil is in the details when it comes to production in auto. You know, you can have great ideas and then fall short on the production side. And I think that's where a lot of automakers do fail, startups. So I don't know what's there, but I bet there's something of value there.
Yeah.
If you're Foxconn, at least you got something to start from. You're not starting from scratch.
Yeah.
You know?
What was Steve Burns' pedigree prior to Lordstown? Just because a lot of the ways that we are running these manufacturing companies with these out of the gate huge valuations, it's just it's sounding a lot more like Wall Street than traditional manufacturing to me.
He came from Workhorse. I don't remember where he was before then, but Workhorse was also that company that was going to put together that fleet of work trucks. Basically, it was all concept driven. Where he was before that, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't remember. But again, in addition to what he was getting paid there, it just blew me away when you saw him getting a $60 million payday for basically running a company or startup into the ground.
Yeah. I mean, all you see is just, it seems like quarterly he's dumping about 5 to 10 million shares to cash in again.
And he is going to get stuck with a bunch of these shares eventually, because what is it at now? Like 13 cents or something like that.
Yeah.
But he was still selling millions of shares, even when it was less than $1 a share. You're still clearing some pretty good cash there.
No kidding.
Right. Lordstown, you know, a lot of this comes down to logistics, like we've talked about, materials costs. Lordstown says that the cost of materials needed to build its first model, the Endurance, quote, is currently and expected to continue to be substantially higher than our selling price. And it comes down to the company needs new funding. And it came out, it was almost laughable to me that the company came out and it's like, we need new funding, a new dance partner, or we need to resolve our significant liabilities or file bankruptcy. And it's just, I don't know who you're courting when you come out and say, the end is imminent. Like, we have no chance of survival unless, you know, I mean, it's the corporate equivalent to shaking the can on the street. Last November, Foxconn took an 18.3% stake in Lordstown, as well as 2 seats on the board for the cool $170 million. So did they get 2 seats on the board and just never pay?
It was set in stages, so they have paid some, and then there's much more to come that they're withholding at this point.
And this is separate. Like, they gave them $230 when they bought in initially, right? So this was supposed to be the second.
For another 20%.
And they bought the factory. That was part of it.
Okay. Just, wanted to get into the details a little bit of how this, when 2 great companies like Lordstown and Foxconn can come together and just really anchor it to the bottom.
Right, yeah.
All right.
2 sticks of dynamite. You just, such a surprise.
Well, I mean, maybe there is some salvageable IP there. And, there are still a lot of workers out in Lordstown. You hope that something could happen, or, but I don't know.
So what happens? They only made like 40 of these trucks. They have delivered like 6 of them, I think.
Yeah.
Does this become like almost a DeLorean type of collectible item here or something?
For sure.
Yeah. It's going to, again, we joke about it, but it's going to be a great docuseries. And
it's a story. I mean, when you look at through the history of how that came together, it is.
Yeah.
It's a good story.
Well, and it will, whoever has them, they'll be auctioned off. They'll be like in 30 years from now when they find another Endurance in like a barn somewhere, and then they auction it off for millions. Anyway, we digress, and so we move on to our next story. Ford experiments with Super Duty truck line. Ford Motors' Kentucky truck plant is trying out a new strategy to fix some quality control problems. Instead of assembling trucks and fixing any issues after they're completed, the car maker shuts down the line so engineers and suppliers can fix defective parts. According to Reuters, plant manager Joseph Clisardo gave an example when he shut down production for 3 days for a fix. And when you're making Super Duty pickup trucks, those days can cost millions. Ford will soon unveil a redesigned Super Duty truck, and the new quality control method is part of a strategy shift to catch these bugs before the trucks hit the road. These trucks are big-ticket items for the automaker, some going for more than $100,000, and they generate billions of dollars for Ford. Quality problems have been costly for the automaker, which spent some $4.17 billion just on warranty claims last year. So Ford hired 300 new quality inspectors at the plant, as well as more engineers to run down these root causes as they come up. Jeff, sound strategy or too many cooks in the quality kitchen?
I think it's a little bit of them trying to, I won't say put makeup on a pig, but sort of cover up some other issues that may be going on there. It's great, first of all, to reaffirm your approach and commitment to quality. Okay, nobody's going to argue with that. And I'm not saying that's not part of this strategy. I also think part of it is we're going to take more time with these vehicles because we kind of have to. I think there's still a lot of supply chain issues here. When they talk about one of the big upgrades to these Super Duty trucks, there's a lot of creature comforts involved. So we're talking about more electronics. There's still a chip issue out there. Okay, according to a report, even as recently as September of last year, there were still 40,000 of these Super Duty models that were basically sitting in a lot that couldn't be sold.
Waiting on chips.
They're still waiting on chips. So I think it is good that you're looking to slow things down and focus on quality because that can be a cost issue. But I think it's also some of these other factors involved. One thing that is worth considering, though, I think it was, I forget the name of the firm, I'll circle back on that, but a recall for a part usually costs about $500 per vehicle to the manufacturer. So if you are looking for cost savings and focus on quality, this does make sense. But again, I think there's supply chain issues. We can look at the production numbers for these Super Duty vehicles. They've decreased significantly over the last couple of years. You have to believe that's tied to, again, supply chain concerns.
It could be tied to supply chain concerns, but also, I mean, these are legitimate quality investments that they're almost incubating at this plant and talking about spreading throughout their network. Anna, do you think this is lipstick on the pig, or is Ford trying to do things better when it comes to quality?
Yeah, I'm glad you said lipstick because I didn't know. Jeff said makeup. Are we putting a full face of makeup on the pig now? Or?
I mean, I think so.
Okay.
It's that
300 guys, 300 quality people. It's more than lipstick.
I'm stopping at lipstick. No, there's nothing. No eyeliner. None
no
of that.
No blush for the pig.
No blush. I think you both brought up some really good points here. I want to look at it too from a perspective of an automaker who has struggled with their stock price for the better part of the last year. To give you some context on that, so Ford's stock price eclipsed $25 per share, which was a record high for the company in early 2022. Today, it's below 12, which means it has dropped by half. Why? Well, I think part of that is the stock market correction that's impacted most publicly traded companies, but also Ford in particular reported in February, as we covered, I think in this podcast as well, that its fourth quarter 2022 net income had fallen 90%.
Yeah.
We're in a new quarter now, a new fiscal, but even after posting Q1 earnings just this week that beat Wall Street estimates and were described as, quote, stellar, Ford stock fell anyway.
Yeah.
So according to Barron's, I pulled this line out of an article about their report. It said, investors just don't like car stocks these days. Ouch.
That's a hard generalization.
It's hard, and it's hard to move on from. But I think that leaves Ford with a steep challenge to preserve any progress that it's able to make, and then also kind of points to the fact that it's really difficult for them to weather any type of setback here. And that's where we get this approach, I think, which is essentially risk mitigation, as Jeff was referring to. Many quality problems result in recalls, and some recalls don't really register with stockholders, but there are certain types that do. And this is according to the Motley Fool, which is like a stock tip website. But they claim that those that are known instances in which the defect has led to injuries or deaths, or becomes clear that that defect would endanger people, that might move a stock price. If the defect is expensive to repair, requiring new parts or several hours of work by mechanics, or both. Or if there are a lot of vehicles with that defect. And so, as David said, like in the video, the Super Duty is super critical.
Yeah, I have fun here.
Yeah. I think Ford may have a measured and quick response on anything that has the potential to jeopardize that, from not only a sales and recall cost standpoint, but also the market perception that could impact their stock price, because I think we all know that is driving so many business decisions these days, and also influences like the overall perception and how a CEO or an executive is assessed as being successful or not, is how they can move that stock price. If Ford has any concerns that they're going to put these trucks on the road, they're going to get recalled, and it's going to drive their stock down, they don't want to do that. They don't want to run that risk. And I think, to your point too, if these vehicles are just sitting around, that cost calculation, people throw that around in auto all the time, $1 million a day or $1 million an hour, whatever that is. That changes when you're considering the vehicles may be sitting waiting on other parts or components.
Yeah, when they're just sitting on a lot. Joe S., who is watching us live, thanks for joining us, Joe. He actually ordered Super Duty. He ordered his 2023 Super Duty in October 2022. Won't see it until November, December 2023, and this will likely push back that timeline.
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's better than, he does say that it's better than bringing it back to fix it right away. So there's like an actual, anecdotal evidence of, maybe this could work for the perception when it comes to investing over $100,000 in a Super Duty truck and not being as fearful that it's going to have a recall.
Fair enough.
Go ahead.
I want to circle back a little bit to Anna's point on the stock prices. We also ran a story about, again, with that Ford earnings coming out very strong, but a lot of it was attributed to, again, internal combustion vehicle sales. Oh, yeah. Do you guys think, I guess, that maybe that decline, even though the sales were higher, was because it was basically boosted by traditional vehicles as opposed to EVs? Yeah. You think that's why people maybe looked at that and went, meh, big deal?
I do think that, like, if Barron's is saying investors don't like auto stocks right now, I do think that's why, because we're at such a weird inflection point between that transition. They don't really know, like, how is this going to go? And, as basic as that could be causing some hesitation there, I think.
Dan, who's also watching us live, it's good to hear from you again, Dan. What he's asking, is Ford more concerned with meeting financial targets and pleasing investors than delivering value to its customers? And it seems like this dance is doing a little bit of both, trying to do a little bit of both.
Yeah.
But he says that it seems to be the trend.
I agree, Dan.
If they aren't meeting quality targets, they shut down the line. And I think that is a very intriguing proposition. And I think it's also interesting that they are willing to commit to spreading this through Ford's entire ecosystem if it works. This could be the new standard. Some of the examples that they had, workers are feeding images of electrical connections to software that can determine if the connectors are properly connected. I assumed that this software was some sort of AI, just kind of showing, or I mean, maybe not necessarily AI, but they also talked about these command centers that they're building for engineers. So this is real hardware and investment that's going into it, not just kind of smoke and mirrors where they're like, quality concerns, so we're slowing down the line. There's actual investment there. Some of the inherent problems, or some of these problems are inherent with normal new features, right? So one example was that this front seat of the new Super Duty reclines to create like a sleeping bed. But when they find a defective sensor in the sleeper seat, the line stops. I was also intrigued by this feature. The fact that, first of all, that there's a sensor in it. So is it like also a sleep number bed? But now, let's also talk about the issues with commuting that make this necessary, but I guess maybe the prospect of not staying in shady motels when you're out on the road, maybe pocketing the housing stipend will help you pay for that $100,000 truck. I don't know.
If it's a work truck, or who knows what people are needing that for. It's like a mobile office, maybe they need an app. Maybe they need an app. I don't know.
Temporary rain shower at the job site.
Yeah.
Pitch a nap.
All right. They're looking out for all the workers that need naps. Dave Jones, who is on the testing team, says, he was describing this new method when it comes to road testing these. Mm-hmm. And his quote I thought was just pretty funny. If it's got a button, touch it. Make sure it works. Sometimes you don't have to overcomplicate it.
Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah. Get them on the road and test every button. All right. Well, our next most popular story. Mercedes makes drivers pay to go faster. I feel like this might rile some people up. Subscription services are one of the most controversial trends in the auto industry. Recurring revenue is the new golden goose, and everyone wants a piece, regardless of how damaging it could be to the brand. BMW is charging for heated seats. Volkswagen wants you to pay for all-wheel drive. And now Mercedes wants you to pay to go faster. The car maker is offering EV owners the opportunity to buy an extra 60 horsepower for $60 a month or 80 horsepower for $90 a month. According to CNN, the upgrade will give you a nearly 1 second decrease in 0 to 60 acceleration. The feature, the feature is unlocked as an over-the-air update, and you can pay for it outright for $2,000 and get it permanently. Anna, this a la carte as a service in automotive is escalating, and to a point where I think it might really start angering some car buyers out there.
Me?
You included?
It might start angering me.
Yeah.
I know we've discussed these before. And I've been pretty vocal about my distaste for this foray on behalf of the automakers. Jeff, before you say it, I know they have a right to do this. And it is a good revenue stream for them. But there's a lot of good revenue streams that are a big disadvantage to the consumer, right? And I just don't really like this one. And for several reasons. For one, I think we are being subscriptioned to death in general in today's society. Mm-hmm. Look at the streaming services scenario and tell me that you pay less today for content that you did, before. That's not.
But that bubble is already bursting and people. Oh, sorry. Okay.
I don't want to get out on that tangent, but we can come back to it.
Okay.
Secondly, for the most part, subscriptions are being applied to parts of your life that you can choose whether or not to use them. If you don't want a meal kit, cool, you can still cook. That's not really the case with these. Like, could you imagine if this were applied to other technology that you use every day, like your phone? Like, your phone can take calls and texts, but you need to pay $7 a month to enable the camera, or $9 a month to enable more than 5 apps, or I don't know. To me, it's the same thing. And if you want to have heated seats or more horsepower, I really want it built into the price of these vehicles at the outset and be allowed to make that decision then and there, because guess what? There is not a chance in hell that this lowers the cost of a vehicle. They say that is what it's good. I'm sorry, guys. Again.
Yeah. Anna's running hot today.
Real potty mouth over there.
Yep, running hot.
Okay.
Anyway. Yep.
Because
apt enough already.
Here is my reason for believing this. Because if automakers were making an even trade here, then GM and Stellantis would not say that they expect to make an additional $1 billion from services in the next decade. Mm-hmm. So that is not an even trade. That's not them saying, "Oh, we'll do it this way," but then you can decide to buy it for a lower cost. They're not lowering the price of their vehicles. Mm-hmm. Again, I know that they have the right to do it. But as we consumers, I just think we're in an unfortunate position here, because if all the auto companies do it at once, it's going to be very difficult for us to push back on it with our pocketbook and with our purchasing decisions. And to me, I just see this as escalating that purchase price in the end, because I don't see this driving down cost.
The reason it's important to talk about the subscription service bubble already bursting and consolidation about to continue happening in the market is that will happen in every other industry that tries to do it as well. So if they're trying to copy the sort of same subscription services that you see in consumer electronics and other industries, they also have to realize that there is a breaking point for the consumer. And at one point, they will just sit down, look at their budget, and they're going to start slashing.
Yeah, I just don't want to participate in that. I don't want that to happen in every single industry. And to be honest, like, you know, whether you have Netflix and Disney Plus, I mean, whatever. But like, I want to be able to roll down my windows.
Yeah, no, understandable. And a big part of this for me, Jeff, is that this car starts at $77,900. Do you think luxury car owners are going to put up with these like desperately cheap tactics?
Desperately cheap tactics? What do you mean by that?
If you're buying an $80,000 car and then Mercedes comes to you and they're like, hey, we're going to need to take like $60 a month.
Or you can just pay $2,000 now when you buy the car. That's
okay,
choice.
so you're saying that it's more of a sales tactic where like they float this desperately cheap gimmick at them and they're like, or just for another $2,000.
Gee, David, where do you stand on this issue? You seem right down the middle.
I am. I'm fair and balanced.
Jeff wants cars to cost more. Jeff wants cars to cost more because automakers can do it.
That's right.
Yep. There, I just saved you some time. That was Jeff's perspective.
In addition to the points Anna has already made for me, what I would say is, I guess in this instance, now there are some features. Now there's going to be a line. Okay, talk about automatic windows. Yeah, if you start paying a subscription fee to roll down your windows, there's going to be consumer backlash. Okay,
all-wheel drive, man, like
all-wheel drive. But that depends on the model of the vehicle. Not every vehicle is all-wheel drive.
Right, I know.
So that's what I'm saying. I don't understand how this is different than buying a different tier of vehicle. It's just software instead of hardware. When I was going through my stretch of 3 or 4 straight Impalas, you could buy the limited edition. You could buy the sport edition. You could buy the base model. You could do whatever you wanted to when you were buying that car. And they came at different price points with different size engines, et cetera, et cetera. That's what this feels like to me. Now, there is cost savings here for the automaker. Whether or not they pass that along to the consumer, look, they're a business to make money. Okay, I'm not going to.
You said it.
I'm not going to, drink all the Kool-Aid and say it's automatically going to be there to help out the average car buyer. Okay, maybe not, but it does save them money when it's a software fix instead of a hardware transition in terms of the different tiers of vehicle you can buy. But I still don't see how that's different and why it creates all this panic from consumers.
Because it's going to cost more. That's why.
But it doesn't have to, Anna. You don't have to.
But it will.
You don't have to get a bigger engine.
So it's just a slippery slope, though, don't you think?
That's where consumer feedback, backlash, response, whatever you want to say, will come into play.
And you're going to stand there at the door, manning the suggestion box, being like, leave it here. They will take it and address your concerns later.
Where do you think it's going to go from here?
I mean, heated seats.
Heated seats, really? I don't have heated seats in my car. I don't miss it one bit.
I mean,
I don't need to turn that on.
Okay, I don't know. Different. Like, I mean, do you think it's that far off that
yes.
to rolling down your windows?
Yes, I do. I think when you look at engine performance, yes, I get that. When you look at some of the other infotainment
this is
features,
engine performance.
This is engine performance.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. These are the types of things that you do not necessarily have to have in order for your car to function the way you need to on a day-to-day basis. Okay?
I don't think it's likely for an automaker to say, let's lower the entry point to these vehicles and hope that these people come in later with some subscription services. They're not going to do that. They're going to leave them the same, and then you're going to get nickel and dime down the road. That's the way I see this going.
Joe, who is watching us live, he says he feels like this is going to breed more hackers. And Jeff, that's your specialty. Yeah. There's going to be more with greater software comes greater vulnerabilities.
Wow, Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Joe must have looked at my notes because I had the same thing down here, and I agree with him 1,000%. This is going to lead to that's the bigger issue for me is the cybersecurity concerns that this is going to raise. Because now you're not just, we already talked about people hacking in through the headlights a couple of weeks ago. This just is one more vulnerability potentially. When you're talking about over-the-air software upgrades, that's a lot of information flowing back and forth that's containing personal information, that's containing credit cards and financial information, potential financial institution data. I mean, there's just so many ways then that you're making it easier for the bad actors to hack in, and they're not going to stop with your car.
Yeah.
They can already get a ton of information on you right now just through the DMV as it relates to your vehicle. So one of the big trends, I guess you could say, in cyber attacks right now is something they call drone phishing, where basically, David, because they can look up and see because you got that speeding ticket going through Rosedale, Wisconsin.
Oh, ridiculous.
I just wanted to look for a reason to bring that up.
Thank you.
Because you got that, they can go to the DMV, and on that speeding ticket, it's going to have your driver's license number, it's going to have your license plate number, it's going to have your home address.
You don't need to give them
and they're going to send you an email that says all that stuff, and it's going to have, the vehicle manufacturer right at the top of that email.
Mm-hmm.
So if you respond to it and you say you want to upgrade, all of a sudden they've captured that much more information. So I think it does leave us more susceptible to those types of attacks, and then just the hardcore stuff of people hacking your car and messing with it to potentially steal it, or worse.
Do you think when manufacturers do things like this, it incites bad actors more that want to come in and maybe cause some disruption for the manufacturer?
Here's what you have to remember about hackers. These aren't guys sitting in their grandma's basement anymore.
Yeah,
These are organizations who are extremely well-funded, well-trained, so they're always looking for different opportunities. Their job is to probe every possible outlet to see where they can make money. And if they can make money off of hacking into your car and holding you ransom or extorting money in order for you to get back into your car after you got locked out, they're going to do it. If they can do it to get into your vehicle so that they can steal it and sell it, they're going to do it. Yeah. And again, doing all of these things over the air and expanding that with all these subscriptions and allowing different ways of getting into different parts of your vehicle, it just opens up that much more opportunities for bad things to happen.
Dan, who's watching us live, says 4-wheel drive on a vehicle that is not used is just more stuff to repair and may decrease efficiency. That's a good point. If you do make vehicles with all these capabilities that can be unlocked with over-the-air updates, they could still fail even though you don't use them.
Fair.
That is a good point, Dan. Take that, Jeff. No.
I agreed with him. Are you just looking to pick a fight?
No. I'm not. It's not with
my back
you.
Hurts today.
It is with the people that
disagree with you.
Ticket. No, wrote me that ticket. I'm just saying that if you are speeding 500 feet away from the sign as to where when are you supposed to accelerate? When are you supposed to accelerate?
You have to pass the sign.
If you can see the sign, I'm just getting up to it.
Did you take driver's ed?
I took driver's ed. I don't even know. Actually, the person that gave me the ticket didn't take driver's ed because they don't offer it anymore to his generation. All right. Jesse, who's also watching us live, says hi.
Hey, Jess.
Hi, Jesse. All right. Well, let's move on to our next most popular story. Hyundai's crab walking car changes parallel parking game. Hyundai Mobis, the parts and service arm of Hyundai Motor, recently demonstrated the e-corner system on an Ioniq 5. The system could be revolutionary when it comes to new maneuverability, giving cars the ability to crab walk, zero turn, drive diagonally, and pivot turn. With e-corner, wheels can turn up to 90 degrees simultaneously or separately. So to parallel park, the feature will turn all 4 wheels 90 degrees so that the car can crab walk into the space. Zero turn rotates the front wheels in and the rear wheels out so drivers can turn 360 degrees in the same spot. Diagonal driving is intended to help vehicles smoothly avoid obstacles on the road, and to do it, all 4 wheels turn 45 degrees in the same direction. Jeff, Hyundai Mobis hopes to soon apply the new tech to autonomous cars and purpose-built vehicles, but I feel like there are consumer applications that extend beyond just autonomous cars and, commercial vehicles.
No, I agree. I think it's great safety features. I mean, when you look at I thought of 2 things came to mind immediately. First of all, we have icy weather up here. When you're navigating, backing out of, or anything like that, it's real easy to slip and have your car go a different direction than you intended.
For sure, yeah.
So being able to see the way that they were able to pivot the entire axle essentially 90 degrees, it just makes it so much easier to maneuver. The other place was a real obvious one would be parking lots in terms of getting into tight spots, or when you run into those awkward situations where one of you is going in and you don't know which one. Yeah. According to the National Safety Council, 1 out of 5 accidents in the U.S. occurs in a parking lot.
Oh,
really?
I mean, that's 50,000 accidents a year. Yeah. So granted, a lot of those are distracted drivers, people not paying attention, but there's a lot of them that also happen when people are trying to get into tight spots. They cut the corner too tight, whatever you want to say. So I think when you look at this type of technology, I think there's a number of applications that could just reduce those types of incidents, which cuts insurance costs and all that kind of stuff. And just as a father with 3 young drivers, man, this would make me feel better about them going to the mall on a Saturday.
Yeah. Anna, Seth, who's watching us live, thank you, Seth, says this is remarkable. And, we see a lot of unnecessary features on cars and other anything that comes to market. But these seem like they could actually do a little bit of good.
Yeah, I think this is awesome. Last week I referred to Ford's remote rev engine noise as junk food technology. And I think this is the opposite of that. This is like something that can really have a demonstrable impact on someone's quality of life. And I kind of want to take what Jeff said a step further. Maybe the quality of life thing sounds like an exaggeration, but I know plenty of people personally, sometimes myself included, that would avoid an event or an activity if I knew or they knew that parallel parking were likely the only option.
Yeah. No, you're right. Like a lot of people or just decide not to drive there because they're just like, oh, parking's going to be terrible.
Exactly. I mean, think of how much that impacts people's decision making in terms of like what they do, trying to squeeze into a tight space, as you mentioned. The other, I think, is stopping in busy traffic and trying to go backwards and have to swing out in reverse.
That's a good point.
If you're in stop and go traffic and it's really tight, people don't even give you the space to parallel park. Mm-hmm. So I know plenty of people that would never even think to do some. I mean, look at our downtown in our city that we live in. There's so many wonderful things, museums, live music, performing arts, very cool stuff that I know like my mom or my father-in-law, they do not go downtown because they don't like the parking. They don't know what to expect. Stuff like this is just, it's such a cool application to think about how it could solve that problem and maybe open some doors for people to try some new things out because they don't have to worry about that. So to me, like this was amazing. I thought every component of this is so cool. I guess the biggest question for me is what does it cost? Mm-hmm. And if that's going to make it, I don't know if that's going to work for adding that type of cost to a regular vehicle. I don't know, but
right. But this is a differentiator.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
This makes you, when you have a couple of cars that you're thinking about, this definitely, this is something that I want.
Mm-hmm.
So would you pay for it via subscription for a certain amount every month?
No, Jeff, because I figure that I'm buying a car with the e-corner system. I don't want to pay $60 a month or $2,000 in a lump sum to unlock the e-corner system.
It's already, the cost has already been, I mean, the expenditure's already been done by the automaker. It's already, like, the technology's already in there. They did it.
What if it was at a lower rate, but you had to listen to a commercial every time before you used it?
No, Jeff.
A commercial.
You cannot offer e-corner system as Spotify.
Brakes with commercials. $4.99. Brakes without commercials.
What is that? Oh, that's just the
$9.99.
That's what's the woman from Progressive? You get a Progressive ad every time that you're parallel parking. Yeah. It's like how I pay for it.
It doesn't cost as much though.
Oh my goodness, Jeff, the downfall of modern society. Zero. Like I thought of parking lots the exact same as well. Just because right now at our daycare facility is completely remodeling, and so there is one very narrow alley that every parent and teacher has to navigate in order to park and get their kids and get out. But there's only one way in and one way out, and sometimes you're all the way at the end, and it's like, do I drive over the grass? Because there's someone behind you too locking you in. Whereas something like this, where you could just kind of zero turn around.
Yeah.
I mean, would be really cool.
Yeah, that pivot feature.
Yeah, so cool. I know all that stress that like people carry about stuff like parking. It just sucks.
The only one that didn't really make sense to me was the ability to turn at a 45-degree angle. Just because, I mean, sure, that's something that made sense to me from like an autonomous vehicle standpoint.
Yes, I agree.
When all vehicles are communicating with each other and trying to maneuver in the most efficient way possible, that made sense. But they weren't showing off anything that you can't already do in a car. Whereas like crab walking.
I think some of the bit larger vehicles, when you get into a fleet application,
true.
And that when they are working with really weird dimensions in terms of like docks where they have to unload or unload. I mean, that type of thing, I think in that application, prevalently.
In the video, they were just kind of showing this feature on the highway. Yeah. And so you could more efficiently basically like be that guy that darts in between cars when you see this, like the window into the next lane.
Don't make more of that guy.
Yeah. He's just watching this feature salivating like, oh my goodness, I'm going to make it to work at least 2 seconds faster.
Can't wait to change lanes.
Jesse seems to be a fan of the feature and says that she really needs it in the city. A little bit more about this e-corner system. It's an all-in-one package module that's a brake-by-wire, steer-by-wire, damper, and in-wheel motor, all installed in each wheel. The system is considered the key mobility technology for electrification and autonomous driving. And the company says this technology has never been mass-produced anywhere in the world. Well, maybe they can. Otherwise, a banging concept. All right. Our most popular story this week. Stellantis buyout offer, disgusting, says UAW president. Stellantis plans to offer buyouts to 31,000 hourly and 2,500 salaried employees, hoping to cut 3,500 positions. CEO Carlos Tavares has been warning of the impacts of electrification for months, even blaming it for closing a Jeep plant in Belvidere, Illinois. Chief Operating Officer, or COO, Mark Stewart, recently told Stellantis employees that, quote, the cost of electrification cannot be passed on to the consumer. Stellantis is reportedly offering buyouts to designated non-represented U.S. employees with 15 or more years of service. The news didn't sit well with newly elected UAW President Shawn Fain, who called the buyout offer, spoiler alert, disgusting, while pointing to the automaker's $18 billion global profit for fiscal year 2022. Fain, who recently called the Detroit 3 the enemy, said the move is, quote, a slap in the face to our members, their families, their communities, and the American people who saved this company 15 years ago. He adds, politicians and taxpayers are bankrolling the electric vehicle transition, and this is the thanks the working class gets. Shame on Stellantis. Anna, Fain is fired up over employees that aren't necessarily represented by the UAW.
Yeah, he's taking a pretty aggressive tone at the start of his tenure.
Well, I mean, that's how he got his tenure, right?
Yeah.
He was coming in and he was the plain-spoken man that sounds just like me.
Yeah, he was positioned as the reform candidate. NPR recently described his tone as militant. He was elected in March, and his first message to the UAW members was very adversarial. He told members that he was readying the ranks to take on corporate America. His campaign, as you mentioned, really centered around more aggressive tactics during negotiations with automakers, including possible restructuring, broader focus on human and worker rights, fighting plant closures, improving healthcare, fortifying retirement benefits, and eliminating compensation tiers. So I think that's maybe why he took an interest in these workers who are not necessarily union members. They're described as not represented, which usually means that the collective bargaining agreements do not apply to them. Mm-hmm. Speaking of collective bargaining agreements, the UAW member contracts actually expire in September, so negotiations there are set to begin probably this summer. Fain has told reporters that you're going to see a lot more aggressive UAW, and I do think that union leaders do have a responsibility to be aggressive to a point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've talked about how right now is an ideal time in terms of negotiating power.
Except for that I don't feel that way.
No.
Oh,
because
no.
I think that maybe that moment has passed.
Okay.
And I worry about that tactic in the face of economic softening and other challenges for automakers who, while they are quite profitable right now, you can see they're shoring up resources for potential economic downturn, or maybe the unknown was when it comes to that transition with EVs in terms of their profitability. So John Rousseau, a labor expert at Georgetown University and former auto worker, told NPR that these pressures mean that the UAW is swimming upstream with their negotiations here. I think you're also dealing with the reputation hit that the UAW took in recent years because of a lot of scandals, one after the other, declining membership. And I think let's not fail to mention the fact that Fain barely squeaked by in this election. He won.
Very tight, yeah.
Yeah, it was tight. He won by less than 500 votes. So I don't think that this is exactly a resounding mandate that necessarily says that he can right out of the gate shake things up in like almost a scary way with full support of his union members. calling companies our number one enemy. He said that the UAW is going to put more pressure on politicians and political candidates. And again, like what's interesting is that these jobs are not union jobs. So perhaps this is him just simply trying to take an opportunity to emphasize his message and maybe attempt to build unity. But whatever happens with these contract talks going forward, it's certainly going to be interesting. I don't know if it will be successful. But if it is, it will be unifying. And if it's not, then the UAW is in for some big problems.
Well, and with all that bluster, unification has been a big part of his message as well, is bringing everybody together. And we are so close to September that, hey, we're going to see if he can back it up. If he can back it up. He's got a real test ahead of him in September. Jeff, what do you think the climate is like at Stellantis right now for the average worker who's looking at these buyouts and trying to determine whether or not it's a good time to take it?
I think it depends on what level you are. Okay. Yeah. If you're a plant floor worker, and I think you're looking at everything, you can dislike Tavares if you want to. He has been consistent over the last 18 months. He has been saying this exact same message. And if you read between the lines, he's saying we need to get right-sized. Yeah. That's a terrible term. Nobody likes to hear that. But the reality is automakers are making fewer vehicles. When it comes to EVs, there's going to be greater levels of automation where you may not need the same number of certain skilled workers, okay? It's going to be different type of workforce that you need.
Yeah.
So if these companies want to get right and get ready for the future, these are the types of things that need to take place, okay? Now, again, Tavares didn't come out of left field with this. He's been talking about this for a long time.
That's a good point.
So with all of those different factors, I don't understand why Sean Fain thinks he has this solid ground on which to negotiate. He really doesn't. I know this is what got him elected, this type of rhetoric, but they're just not in that position. The UAW, has been declining in membership for a while. Okay. They went up a little bit last year, but there's still not as many people as there was even 2 years ago. So they're struggling there. The other thing that he has to pay attention to, and I know he wants to talk about, we hate the plant shutdown in Belvedere. We don't like that they're doing these different reductions in the tiers and all that kind of stuff. Stellantis has a lot of work in front of them to get into the EV fold and be competitive there. When you look at where the majority of their sales come from, okay, with the US-based brands of Dodge and Chrysler and Jeep, they're way behind on EVs, okay, way behind. There's a lot of catch up to do there. There's a lot of R&D that needs to take place. And the places where they are strong is over in Europe with their EVs. When you look at, I think it's the Citroen model and the Pugo model, they're doing well with those. Those aren't US companies. So when you're Tavares and you have a global auto OEM and you're looking at what works and where you're doing well and where you got more challenges ahead, this is the type of attitude or message that you're going to put out there. At the end of the day, if you are one of these workers, what would you rather do? Take a buyout now or potentially get laid off later?
Yeah.
That's the real world.
Well, and so UAW posted a letter with the two Stellantis packages. One program offers 50,000 bonuses for anyone hired before 2007. And then there's the voluntary program that is a seniority-based sliding scale lump sum. So, Jeff, are you saying that, and the company said, to support the overall transformation to a mobility tech company, Stellantis continues to evolve its workforce by offering opportunities to learn new skills outside their existing skill set or enhance current skills. I read that, and then I read the voluntary buyouts, and then I'm like, do they mean at a different company?
It was a confusing line.
Yeah, I feel like it depends on the worker, really, not even the location and not even the vehicle they're working on, but the individual worker and who they're willing to invest in, quite honestly. That's what it comes down to. There are some skills that will translate over to a different function in an EV facility or a battery facility, as opposed to a traditional, internal combustion engine driven vehicle. So it's going to be dependent on that. That's why they're not, 3,500 is a lot.
Yeah.
But when you look at their global workforce, it's a smaller percentage.
But okay, I understand that you guys say that the bargaining power is lessening as the economic outlook is softening, but a work stoppage could still be potentially devastating for Stellantis, right?
Well, always. always that. But I do think you cannot discount the fact that a year ago things were different for any worker. Now you're seeing that people are trying to stay put because there's a lot of fears around the economy. You're seeing automakers cut jobs. You're seeing automakers try to sort of batten down the hatches because they don't know exactly what to expect in the next couple of years. So I don't know that I would feel super confident going in this with you're the enemy and we're going to take you down language.
Yeah.
I just don't know if that's going to be helpful.
I don't think the societal perspective also helps the UAW right now. Anna touched on all of the controversies and all of the issues that they've had there. So when you see an auto plant, a UAW strike, in the past, I think there would have been, we got to support those guys. They probably deserve what they're going for, whatever. Now it's kind of like, I don't know, UAW, what do those guys want now? They've been pampered for decades. Now they're trying to get something back.
Well, I think it's more like they're all crooked anyways. You almost look at them like they're politicians. In terms of traditional stereotypes.
Not your words.
Yeah. UAW President Sean Fain also said, we're in the best of times for these companies and they're still idling and closing plants. That's a problem. Also, Sean, it doesn't hurt to smile every once in a while. He's just always looking so angry. Always looking so angry.
He still hasn't sworn as much as Anna did, though.
She is on fire today.
I apologize to all of our listeners.
I was going to say things were a bane, but just because it started with a B and then Eric perked his ears up, I'm just like, nope. We're just going to ellipsis that and leave it to everybody.
I thought that half butt was exempt from the swears list. No?
I
did too, but Mr. Censor back there, he's getting kind of fired up.
He has that finger on the red button. As always, I always like to pull some of the language out as I did previously, but these voluntary programs are being offered to provide a favorable option to employees looking to pursue new opportunities. So if you've been comfortable in the role that you've been doing for 15 years and, imagine that'd be the place that you retired, but you also want to go and work somewhere else.
Yeah.
Hey, here's an opportunity to go and do it. Mm-hmm. But I guess with $50,000. So, maybe you can
take your $50,000 to Starbucks.
Yep. Take your $50,000 and jump in as a barista in the gig economy. It's real easy out there. All right. Well, before we move into, in case you missed it, the stories that maybe weren't as popular on our websites, Industrial Equipment News and Manufacturing.net, where we cover industrial equipment news and manufacturing news, we have another word from our sponsor. Hi, I'm David Manti with Industrial Equipment News. Selecting the right hoses to keep your workers safe and facilities operational is crucial, but not all hoses are created equal. So, to help us work it out, Doug Nordstrom, hose product manager at Swagelok, is going to help us figure it out. Tuesday, May 23rd at 1 p.m. Central, please join us live. So, Doug, I heard that you can get lightning bolts in hoses. Is that true? And is that something we're going to discuss?
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of people aren't aware of something called static dissipation, especially through softer material hoses like Teflon. It's a very common failure, and it actually is a lightning bolt that shoots through the hose, causing leakage.
No one wants that.
No one wants that.
And we're going to figure it out May 23rd. It's a Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central. Register now to join us live. This episode this week is brought to you by Swagelok. Hose failures are unfortunately a very common source of equipment downtime and can create significant safety risks. So join us for the hose party, Tuesday, May 23rd at 1 p.m. for Mastering Hose Selection in Your Facility, a new live video podcast. Register now. It's going to be a great time. Well, let's move on to In Case You Missed It. The stories that maybe weren't as popular on the website, but still stand to make a big impact going forward. And guys, for my In Case You Missed It this week, I really had to dig deep on the leaderboard in terms of the stats, because this was read by one person.
Oh, okay.
And I do thank that person.
So not even in case, just you missed it.
Yeah, it's not in case you missed it. Everyone missed this
We know
one.
you did.
But understandably, the headline was NTSB commends FCC's vehicle to everything waiver. That's on me. Sorry.
What?
But The FCC recently granted a waiver to allow 2 states, 3 automakers, and 9 tech companies to begin deploying vehicle-to-everything, or V2X, technology across U.S. roads and highways. The NTSB recently spoke out in support of this waiver. NTSB Chair Jennifer Homendy said the best way to reduce deaths on U.S. roads is to prevent crashes before they occur, which is why the NTSB has advocated for collision avoidance and connected vehicle technologies that rely on radio spectrum made available by the FCC. This joint waiver was requested by Audi, Ford, Jaguar Land Rover, the Utah Department of Transportation, the Virginia DOT, and 9 other manufacturers. V2X technology relies on direct communication between vehicles and infrastructure and other road users, including motorcycles, bicyclists, pedestrians, all to prevent crashes. Since 1995, the NTSB has been asking the FCC to allocate a dedicated spectrum for transportation safety applications, and this waiver is going to allow stakeholders to begin development. I chose this story because this is the beginning or next step to the Internet of Everything. Jeff, come on.
The what?
Oh, my turn?
Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. I mean, this is what we want to do, these sensor networks, connecting everything. And in this case, we're looking at more of a safety perspective than productivity, cost savings, any of that kind of stuff, where we also kind of identify with IoT technologies. The first thing that comes to my mind, as you might imagine, is how we have to make sure all this stuff is secure, okay? Because there can be somebody out there who just is interested in creating chaos, which you could with this when you're talking about integrating vehicles with safety lights and all that kind of stuff. So while the intention is obviously wonderful and you'd like to see it work, we also need to make sure we're not forgetting the security spot of this, because that's what happens with a lot of industrial control systems. We bring in new encoders, we bring in new HMIs, we bring in new control systems, and we forget to hook up the connected security element of it. So as long as that's in place, I think there's a ton of opportunity here, not just in terms of safety, but just in sharing general information through all these different outlets. We have so much data that we can share right now. The biggest issue is filtering it and delivering it in a way, not just in a timely way, but in a way that's easy to consume. This type of technology, these types of partnerships help with all those things.
Jeff, I teed up the catchphrase.
I wasn't going to take it away from you. I know you want to say it.
I don't want to say it. That's why it says Jeff.
Yeah, it's definitely the thing that leads.
There it is. There it is. We got it.
And I'm not going to half-ass. I mean half, but
Goodness. Everyone's on fire. Man,
Thanks,
you have
Jeff.
a couple of breakfast pizzas in the morning and everyone's crazy.
It's a hell of a catchphrase.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, before we're completely off the rails here, now that this waiver is good to go, the NTSB wants the FCC to make sure V2X technology is protected from interference and, as Jeff said, potential hacks. Anna, any thoughts on this story or the potential of vehicle-to-vehicle communication or even vehicle-to-pedestrian communication?
I mean, I would like to know what that is, vehicle-to-pedestrian communication. Is it just like the vehicles show the driver better, visibility on the pedestrian? Or like the pedestrian is like, here's your earpiece. When a car is coming, we'll just tell you. I like what?
Jump!
Yeah.
No,
You're going to get hit by a car.
I mean, I imagine that it would be like sensors either on devices or in bikes that would communicate with vehicles on the road to know that there is a potential. I mean, think of how many sensors you have on you at any point.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're carrying a phone, that could communicate with the car and just say
like if your Apple Watch vibrates and if a car is speeding towards you or whatever, and you'd look. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and the idea is that the car would know the watch is in front of it and move so that way it wouldn't have to vibrate. And you're like, why does it vibrate again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting approach because like the NTSB board person, I don't remember her name, but
Jennifer Homendy.
Yeah, Jennifer Homendy said like the best way to prevent these deaths is to prevent the crashes. Obviously, big, heavy vehicles are causing more deaths on the roads. We know that there's very little that can be done outside of like the government regulating vehicle size, which they will never do. So we can't do anything about that, right? It's really going to be hard to do anything about people's inability to focus when they're walking and driving, and people's devices and their earphones and being distracted on their phones and stuff. I mean, again, like I think this is maybe one of the variables in this entire picture that we can potentially control. So I think it's an interesting approach, and I'd like to see more.
And we're closer to it than I think everybody thinks. Just because, for example, when we were driving home this weekend, there was a crash.
Was this when you got your speeding ticket?
No, this was the week after.
Okay.
This was the week after I got my speeding ticket.
The week after you got your speeding ticket.
This is where I was
way over getting that speeding ticket by then.
Yeah.
He was totally past it.
I had already paid the speeding ticket, even though understanding that I had every right to go to the court and fight how ridiculous it was that I received a ticket 500 feet away from the sign anyway. And the man was just hiding. Anyway.
Is this entrapment?
I'm pretty sure. I'm the victim here, man.
You should argue entrapment.
But as we were coming home, there was, when you get a flag either on Google Maps or whatever GPS you use that says there's a crash ahead, and if you want to reroute, or it automatically reroutes you, I just saw this train of cars go into rural Wisconsin, and on essentially a frontage road, but it was like a highway that was pretty far off the road, but every once in a while you could get a glimpse of the traffic that was stopped as a result of the crash. And this is like the beginning of it, right?
Yeah, right.
Where, not only does it help free up traffic a little bit sooner, but it kind of essentially puts so many fewer people out of harm's way by doing that, and that's just right now it's something that we kind of opt into with maps. And that's something that in the future vehicles will just do. Anyway, so I just really thought it was a good opportunity to get that thing down, leave that thing in there.
It was.
All right.
Good job.
Well, our next, in case you missed it, is Anna's. What do you got, Anna?
I chose a story called Used Coffee Pods Can Be Recycled to Produce Filaments for 3D Printing. That headline does give a lot of the story away.
Yeah, you know everything right there.
That might be why people didn't click. I don't know. I did learn some interesting things in this article, though. I know that reusable pods exist, and so, but there's still a lot of people that use those one and done plastic pods in like a Keurig or whatever, and most of them wind up in the trash and go into a landfill. I thought this was interesting. Calculations made by the Sao Paulo State Technological Research Institute show that a cup of pod coffee can be as much as 14 times more damaging to the environment than a cup of filter coffee.
Oh.
That's outrageous.
It's honestly surprisingly lower than I thought it would be.
14 times. Yeah. That's incredible. So anyway, they were looking for ways to develop uses for this waste. And so a couple of different research organizations kind of worked together to come up with this idea. But they basically what they did was they produced electrochemical cells with non-conductive filaments of PLA and electromechanical sensors with conductive filaments prepared by adding carbon black to the PLA. And the extruded material that resulted was cooled and then spooled to produce a filament that you could use in 3D printers.
Okay.
So they said that there's a lot of applications for these filaments, including conductive parts for machinery and sensors. And this story got my attention for obvious reasons. I think we've perhaps never been in a worse place when it comes to plastic. Single-use plastic consumption is through the roof. It's higher than ever. I think that has intersected with the breakdown of recycling infrastructure to the point where not only has recycling become really challenging, but I also think a lot of people who would recycle have sort of lost faith in the system as well. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's just like this entire breakdown of that, right? So I think the best solution is coming up with more ways to reuse the plastic that is being produced. And this is such a cool way of solving that problem with a new use case, as they emphasize in this article, creating a circular economy for this plastic. So I thought that was pretty cool.
I'm always kind of blown away by these stories. But I think kind of back to the story we were talking about a couple weeks ago about the recycling plants for lithium-ion batteries. Mm-hmm. A lot of it comes down to scale and having technology that can do it efficiently.
Yeah.
Just because, 8, maybe even 12 years ago at IMTS, there have been these companies that reuse plastics in 3D printing, for large scale parts. And it's just kind of trying to how much longer is it going to take to make that like a market reality?
Right. Yeah.
You know, Jeff, do you use coffee pods?
No, my wife does.
Oh, okay.
So maybe fewer now. No, I love these stories because plastics get vilified. And the problem is not plastic. Plastic makes our life better. It makes a lot of the products that we use better. The problem is we don't know how to recycle it. We don't know how to break it down. And whenever we can come up with a practical application for these remaining plastics that saves them or spares them from going into the waste stream and polluting all these different areas that we know it gets into, that's fantastic. We need to figure out a way to channel more funding towards these ideas. I'm not saying I have that solution, but a lot of it typically comes from just the logistics of getting the materials and separating them out and getting them to the individuals who want to process them accordingly. That seems to be the biggest issue there, not just because that adds to a ton of the cost.
Oh, yeah.
Not just creating the new product from the recycled plastic, but getting the plastic to them. So if we can figure out that step, and now we have all these applications to apply it to, I think we'll be in better shape.
That's something that we see on the university level all the time, where it is just a really cool technology. And then maybe at most you get that line at the bottom that's like, we're looking to commercialize this. And it's just, okay, now we need the biggest part of the equation.
Yeah, big step. Right.
We need the money. Jeff, what is your in case you missed it this week?
I picked a story talking about how Beerbots could speed up the brewing process.
Nice.
I thought this was pretty cool. I learned, actually, the article is great, and I'm not going to get into it because you should take a look at it. If you enjoy beer, it kind of gives a real nice breakdown in terms of how it's actually made. So the biggest part of it, though, is the fermentation element of it. So basically, once you get the grains in there, you need to add the yeast, which combines with the sugar to create the alcohol, okay? That process is one of the most lengthy parts of making beer. It takes up to like 4 weeks or more. And that's also the point at which microorganisms can get in there and sort of taint the taste of the beer and wreck it and make it go sour. So these geniuses, researchers have gone in and basically developed a sort of robotic mechanism that is, they call it a beer bot. It's basically more of a yeast bot.
Okay.
They put the bot in there, and what it can do is it circulates, and it almost works like a fishing bobber in terms of going up and down within the mixture to help ferment the sugars more quickly. And it also allows for the yeast to be extracted more efficiently or more cleanly. So you get a better tasting product more quickly, sooner. So when you look at the craft brewers right now who can put a ton of money into materials and ingredients for producing all these craft beers that I personally love, I know our production staff is also a big fan, to be able to make sure that they're not going to waste as much material and they can get more product out sooner is a huge benefit. You could see this going into other areas whenever you have these types of mixtures, other than just beer. There's other food products where this is potentially applicable to. You could also see this makeup because basically they've encapsulated this yeast into a polymer, okay? Added a slight propulsion system to it, very, very simple in terms of how it actually functions. So it's not expensive technology to implement. But if there are other mixing applications, you could see this saving a lot of time and getting better product out to consumers more quickly. So I thought it was a really cool application of robotics. There's a lot of times we talk about this stuff and it's sort of pie in the sky and this is what it could be one day. This worked right now.
I mean, ever since we got into this industry, ever since this industry started, what are the two biggest things, right? Cost controls and speed to market.
Yeah.
And this solves a really big problem there. It does remind me though, Jeff, while you were on the DL last week, were you able to find a suitable amount of fruit-filled desserts and beer?
Beer was not a problem. I did not have a lot of fruit-filled desserts. I had to go with just fruit. Yeah. Yeah.
Sad times, man. Anna, any thoughts on the Beerbots and their potential?
Yeah, I think this is cool. And I agree, the production team does not half butt their beer consumption. My favorite part of the article, though, was at the end where they acknowledged that they got a grant from the Czech Republic, which is like the beer drinking capital of Europe. So, way to go, Czechs! I like the cut of your jib, Czechs. No, I would like anything that I agree. Anything that can help speed up in a processing environment. You're dealing with a lot of ingredients and expirations and things like that. Trying to get through that process faster is going to be a big benefit to these brewers. So pretty cool.
Well, before we get out of here this week, let's move on to our final thoughts. And I'm going to start with you, as I do every week. What is your final thought?
We're hosting a 50th wedding anniversary party for my in-laws this weekend.
Congratulations.
Which is I just want to call that out because it's a pretty impressive feat. Not to mention you have to get married when you're like 20 to do that.
Yeah.
Which they did. So
beating all the odds.
Yeah. So I don't really know what to do at the party. If there's like any songs or do you...
Yeah.
Is there a song? What do? You just eat tacos? That's what we're going to do is have tacos.
So the VFW that has the best fish fry in Madison, they were hosting a 50th wedding anniversary last week when I was trying to order.
Okay.
And let me tell you what, just stick with all the traditional party fairs because they were tearing it up in there.
Yeah. Okay.
One thing that was cool is they had the wedding dress on display, which was kind of cool.
Oh.
And like some artifacts from the wedding or from,
Artifacts.
well, I mean, I was like, there's a table of artifacts, just a very yellow dress at this
It's
point.
like a brush and you just brush off the...
But it was like between trying to get the fish and the drink, like they were having a good time back there.
Yeah. Well, I hope everyone has fun. We got this banner. I don't know.
You can tell your kids, they took pictures without using a phone. They actually had cameras back then.
Yep. They think that it was like life was not in color back then. Just black and white everything.
Well, I mean, congratulations to them. And that sounds, I mean, nothing's really high stakes with the 50th wedding anniversary. I mean, you just celebrate them and like have a good time, good food, good drink. I think you're all right.
Yeah, should be fun.
Speaking of good food, we are rather spoiled in this office when it comes to some of the amenities that are offered.
True.
And we recently installed a pizza oven.
Installed.
We had to plug it in, folks.
It was a difficult installation.
Yeah.
We had a lot of downtime.
Yeah. No, there's a pizza oven installation. As you can see, there's a mat.
There were at least 6 guys with their hands on their hips looking at it.
Yeah, like about 30 seconds of training.
Yeah.
And it was...
There's only one button. That took some time to figure out how you used one button to control both time and temperature. And luckily, we were able to overcome that obstacle.
Good, I'm glad.
But man, what an uplifting addition to the office. I don't know how it's going to weigh on my health in terms of the breakfast pizza phenomena, but
David, is there a breakfast pizza that doesn't have any bacon on it? Because Eric and I are so sad every time you guys make one of those, and then we're like, I guess we'll just have a piece of dry toast.
No, I know. I
Made in the pizza oven.
You might imagine that the options for the frozen breakfast pizza are fewer. I did try to meet you guys in the middle, and I bought the Western omelet one.
Yeah.
But that was still like piled with bacon. Just like there was a little Western omelet underneath the mountain of bacon.
That's not the middle for sure.
I'm going to keep at it. We have a lot of frozen pizza manufacturers out in our audience. So if you got a line on a good vegetarian frozen pizza, we're willing to give it a try.
Pizza.
Or breakfast pizza.
Vegetarian breakfast pizza.
And, we'll do a review for it on Food Manufacturing Magazine. There we go. Everybody wins.
All right, sounds good.
Everybody wins. And, I'll keep at it. You uncovered the Dunkin' Donuts jelly beans and brought those to the office. I've got to do my part as well. Jeff, what are your final thoughts this week?
Great to be back.
Yeah.
Andy did a great job. I did listen last week. You guys were wonderful. This weekend, we don't have a 50th wedding anniversary. Kind of the other side of that, we're doing some college visits. So if anybody's got, if there are any Ripon College or University of Wisconsin Oshkosh grad alumni out there that need to skew the process a little bit, let me know which one you'd prefer or good experiences or whatever. That's kind of what we've narrowed it down to. So.
Nice. That sounds fun.
When you said the opposite of that, I'm like, are you celebrating someone's divorce this weekend? I'm just like, it's going to be a weird party, man.
They were divorced 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Never looked back. No. So that's,
Okay.
That's on my weekend plan.
Yeah. I'm a big advocate for the UW system.
Trying to go that way. We'll see.
Okay. Did we have any feedback from our podcast polling question 2 weeks ago?
We did. We talked about artificial intelligence and potential applications, feelings, stuff like that. As far as applications, it was pretty much split down the middle between product development and plant operations. We had some pretty interesting feedback here in terms of people's attitudes or feelings towards artificial intelligence. Larry wrote in, he said he just finished a long article that addressed both the pros and cons of AI, and he has to admit that he's confused, but he does believe that anything we create, we must control, David. Okay, he's not giving in to the robot overlords.
All right.
Without oversight, I can see it possibly going terribly wrong. Without the moral compass that can only be possessed by humans, the morality of all mankind cannot be encompassed, and that has to sort out what is desired and what it desires. A machine can't do that. So that was from Larry.
Thanks, Larry.
Charlie also wrote in. He said he sees it as a great tool for having preventative maintenance schedules being adhered to. There's no chance for people to override these events and cause damage to people and property that could have been prevented. True. So there you can kind of see both sides of that. Again, people were overall more on the negative side of AI's future than the positive, but that was the feedback from the polling question. My last closing thought is I'm going to be out for the next 2 weeks. Got some travel coming up here. So I don't have a new polling question.
Okay.
But, if you want to, vote on who should be taking my spot or something, maybe we can
oh my goodness,
that
the
out
podcast
there.
Poll is who takes your spot next week. Dangerous.
Maybe we've got a listener who thinks they could do it better.
Dangerous.
Bring them in.
Yeah, we could call somebody in.
Maybe Jess wants to sit in on this one.
A podcast poll. What animal other than the crab would you like to see inspire new automotive technology?
Put it out there, man.
I don't know. No, I like the idea of really having the viewership fight over our hosts. That seems like a really
what
positive,
could go wrong?
Really positive.
What could possibly go
team
wrong?
building exercise. All right, we're gonna do trust falls to see who gets the next spot. All right, well, but Jeff,
I'm good, man.
Okay, Anna.
Yeah, let's do this.
All right, well,
walk us out, David.
Before we get out, walk us out. Before we get out of here, please make sure, no, I'm not going to do that to you. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Thank you to everyone that's given us five-star reviews on Apple and Google. Really appreciate that. If you could keep that coming, that really helps us out a lot as we move this thing forward. You can also email the podcast. You can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. Subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. And subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine. And join us live like Joe, Seth, Jesse, Dan. Who else was here today? I don't know. We had a bunch. Thanks a lot. It was a good time. I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and I think my brain just broke. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.